So a lot of people talk about starting yoga, that they then take up other healthier behaviours like walking more or starting going to the gym. We know how difficult it is to take up healthy behaviours. So I think that's quite an important pathway as well.
And then they end up in yoga retreats in Bali.
Is that where you are?
With lots of crystals around themselves. And
hold on.
Right now.
That's where you are, isn't it? You're on a secret yoga retreat in Bali and you just didn't want us to know.
I am. I'm in a class right now. I've just got really good sound cancelling.
Knew it. This is The Method, a podcast from Thriver about what health looks like in the real world.
I'm Dr. Greg Potter. I'm a scientist and health and performance consultant.
And I'm Charlie Edmondson. I'm definitely not a science expert. I've got a regular job and I'm here to remind Greg of what life's actually like when you're not a nerd.
You must be a nerd about something. I bet you are. On this show, we'll work out some sustainable changes to your routine that are actually going to make a difference to your health. And to do that, we have a simple 3-step method. With the help of an expert, we first unpack the science behind one key health question. Second, we give some recommendations related to what we're speaking about on the day. And then finally, we put the practice to the test.
Each week, we're going to hear from those who have tried and tested our recommendations to help turn a so-called ideal lifestyle into something that actually works for you.
What are you drinking? What's your morning beverage of choice?
Coffee, always. If I'm out, flat white with oat milk, standard. If I'm at home, just a normal coffee with oat milk.
Flat white with oat milk. That must be among the most, if not the most popular morning beverage among British millennials.
Is it?
There's a coffee shop called Flat White or Fuck Off.
Phenomenal. Where is this? Please. I need to invest.
I don't know if they offer oat milk. I'm sure they do.
Where is it? London.
It is. Next time you're down.
Let's go to Flat White or Fuck Off. And please, will you order a latte? Just to see what happens. You know, that would actually be my worst coffee if someone said I had to drink a latte. What's your coffee of choice?
Ooh.
I don't know if I know this.
Filter coffee, V60. I'm a coffee nerd. So black coffee, lightly roasted from all sorts of different places. But normally if I'm traveling around, I carry with me my hand grinder and my V60.
Oh, for God's sake.
My filter papers and at least 2 different coffees because I'm that weird.
Yeah,
But
okay.
Having good coffee anywhere in the world, such a treat. Good coffee with a view, love it.
Oh, I don't think there's anything better.
Do you have coffee before exercise?
Yeah, it's literally the first thing I do. I open the kitchen door, let the dogs out, walk straight in, put the kettle on, make a coffee.
I'm with you. And we're talking about exercise today, aren't we?
We are. We are talking with Tina Cartwright today about yoga, which some people might not necessarily class as a form of exercise. What are your thoughts on that?
I think to be exercise, it needs to produce health benefits. I don't know if there's also the inclusion of doing it with a view to getting health benefits, but certainly yoga could meet those criteria. There are health benefits to be had, and I'm sure that Tina will go into those today in some depth.
So Tina is a health psychologist and researcher at the University of Westminster, where she leads a group focused on understanding how yoga can support health and well-being. Alongside her academic work, she's also a qualified yoga teacher and has been practicing for over 20 years. Her research includes the first national study of yoga practice in the UK and is evaluating yoga programs within the NHS. Her work looks at how yoga can be used in real-world settings, from schools to workplaces to healthcare, with a focus on making it more accessible to everyone. And this is actually her first ever time on a podcast. We've got a world first.
Wow. She's been shot straight into the stratosphere.
Oh, God. Yeah, she might not be doing a second after chatting with us.
She's peaked. She's going to retire straight after.
Or will traumatise her so much she never wants to do another one.
What's been your experience with yoga?
I like yoga. I don't do it consistently, but my first ever experience with yoga or being aware of what yoga was my nan, bless her. She used to go and do it in the local church hall with her mates when she was in her 70s. And she loved it. She used to go once a week. I don't necessarily know that she was great at it, but I think they all used to have a brew and a biscuit after, and she probably liked that just as much as she did the yoga. But then, yeah, I've done a few classes local to me, but I think it's got a lot more popular recently, hasn't it, in the last few years? A lot of the places near me, for yoga and Pilates. 20 quid seems excessive, personally. But yeah, when I do it, I absolutely love it. I did a couple of classes when I was in Spain on holiday once, which was lovely. When I went to Sardinia, I did some yoga there. Yeah, I love a shavasana. I could shavasana for 12 hours. I mean, it's my favourite part, where they sometimes put a blanket on you at the end. I've never really thought about it in any more depth than it's so relaxing.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever got caught up in some of the stuff that often comes with it? Because yoga tends to go hand in hand with things like meditation.
No, I haven't ever got... The last bit of meditation I did was with David Spiegel on air.
Also peaked.
Peaked. Yeah, ultimate. But no, I think because my life moves at 100 million miles an hour, I mean, I probably should meditate, but the moment my alarm goes off, I'm up and out of the door and then don't stop until 20 minutes before bed. And normally I'm that tired, I just fall fast asleep anyway. I know a lot of people benefit from meditating first thing in the morning, don't they? Just to sort of set their intention for the day.
Yeah, I think many people approach mindfulness meditation as this is my 10-minute practice, but they're not able to translate that to the rest of their lives. And actually, that is the goal. Ultimately, people feel that they're too busy to have a mindfulness practice, but really what your goal should perhaps be is to do everything mindfully. And you could start with an activity of daily living instead. There are various examples that often come up, like doing the dishes, but you could do anything mindfully, just about.
Doing the dishes mindfully? How do you just be very present when you're doing the dishes?
Exactly.
Oh, I hate doing the dishes, Greg.
Most people do.
Got a dishwasher.
Dishwasher, sat on your marble floor.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I forgot I am living the life of ultimate luxury. Right, shall we bring Tina in?
Yes, here she comes.
Hello, Tina. Welcome to The Method. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And thank you for inviting me along. I'm really excited to be talking about yoga.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So just to start us off, Tina, I'm curious, how did you actually get into yoga?
Well, I actually first came to yoga when I was at university, and I went along to a class and really enjoyed it, and kind of took me a long time to build up a regular practice. But yeah, I suppose I've been doing it ever since then, yoga and meditation. So that's how I started my own practice. But I obviously came to research in yoga quite a lot later.
And what does your meditation practice look like?
It's quite varied. It's sort of predominantly Tibetan Buddhist based.
Oh.
So a range of different practices.
They tend to go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah.
So to get us all on the same page, just before we delve into the science of things, how would you describe what actually makes up a yoga session when people talk about it as a mind and body practice? What do they actually mean by that?
Yeah, it's a really important question, Charlie, because I think there's quite different ideas about what yoga is. And, you know, especially in the West, often it's associated with quite a physical practice. So, and that's just one component, the kind of movement practice, normally together with the breath. But then there's a range of different breathing practices that are usually incorporated, relaxation and mindfulness, and they all kind of combine together.
And if we move beyond maybe anecdotes, what does the research actually show about how people start to respond to yoga over time? So if we think both physically and psychologically, what changes do we tend to see?
Yeah, so in terms of kind of physical benefits of yoga, it's quite wide ranging from kind of more fitness level impacts, obviously flexibility, strength, balance, respiratory functioning, as well as for certain health conditions, positive impacts from practicing yoga. In terms of, sort of mental health benefits, often just mood, people feel better after practicing yoga. So that can be quite longer term as well, impacting on symptoms of anxiety and depression, but also improvements in well-being. So that's quite well documented in the research.
And you just mentioned there about some of the medical conditions, the physical benefits. What medical conditions might sort of be helped by practicing yoga?
Yeah, I mean, quite a range really. But I guess the ones that are more evidence-based are things like back pain, helping to manage diabetes, but particularly around also like prevention. So preventing cardiovascular risks, preventing kind of early stage or stopping early stage diabetes, respiratory conditions as well. So yeah, kind of wide range.
And the benefits are going to depend on how you do it. Yoga is likely to have greater effects on capacities like flexibility and balance than it is on cardiovascular health or respiratory function. But those benefits can be there. Some of your research has focused on how yoga affects stress and mental health. And some work, including your own, has shown that it can improve various measures of mental health, from perceptions of how stressed people feel to helping to ease anxiety and depression. And I sometimes wonder what's driving those benefits. Lots of people are quick to point to changes in the autonomic or automatic nervous system that takes care of lots of day-to-day functions in our bodies in the background without us thinking about them. And that seems to, for whatever reason, have really captured public imagination. In the last 5 years or so, a lot of people now speak about autonomic balance or nervous system regulation. Something about that has entered the zeitgeist now. But I think there are surely many factors at play. There's the mindfulness that you mentioned earlier, but other factors, like if you're going to a yoga class, you have social interaction that comes with that. And maybe you spend more time in daylight, which is going to be good for you in various ways too. So what do you think are some of the ways that yoga can improve mental health? And do you think there are any mechanisms that people commonly look past?
Yeah. So the autonomic nervous system is basically made up of the sympathetic nervous system, which is our stress response, our fight and flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system is our relaxation response. So often yoga is associated through breathing, stretching, and movement is associated with increasing the relaxation response. So, and that's really important. But also I think what's really interesting is the flexibility between the two, because we need a balance between the two. So there's some evidence that actually practicing yoga can help to regulate the kind of central nervous system and enable us to shift from responding in our kind of fight or flight. So if we want to like do a presentation, for example, but then when we finish, we can flick back into our more relaxation response. That's kind of really important for mental health and also for cognitive flexibility. So it enables us to have a more kind of rounded perspective. That's an important element. But I think also what you're saying about the social interaction is really important. And that really comes up a lot in research. If you're practicing yoga in a group, especially in the kind of context of increases in loneliness at a kind of population level, that's a really important element. See, there are studies that look at online versus in person. Actually, don't find that much difference, but that's still part of a group, even if you can't necessarily see other people. So what the kind of evidence shows in terms of online yoga provision shows that it's still effective as an intervention. And even it can even be effective in supporting social connection as well and can really impact on people's mental health.
I can absolutely vouch for that because in a weird roundabout way, me and Greg ended up meeting through virtual yoga that Greg wasn't on. But during COVID...
I was the yoga teacher.
No, he wasn't. I would like to clarify. Have you ever done yoga?
Not really. No,
he's never done yoga. No, I knew he wouldn't have.
No, I stretch.
I could see by his face. He was like,
I stretch and I meditate, but no, never formal yoga.
Yeah, during COVID, I started doing virtual yoga with my triathlon club at the time and ended up meeting someone who co-founded a business with Greg. And that's how we met, weirdly, during virtual yoga. And it was so important. I think during COVID, we all kind of lost our minds a little bit, didn't we? No routine, didn't know what day it was. 6 a.m, we all used to meet and do a 45-minute virtual yoga class with some guy in, well, his YouTube channel was in San Francisco or something on some balcony, and it was a real escape from reality for 45 minutes. So I can definitely vouch for the importance of doing it in a community setting.
Yeah, I think yoga became really popular, online yoga, during that period. And we did some work looking at that. And it does really open up the potential of social connection, because people were talking about how they were meeting up with their sister who lived in another country and connecting with teachers that they wouldn't normally be able to access.
My first ever exposure to yoga was my nana, bless her. She used to do it in the local church hall. And I had no idea when I was like 5 what she was doing. And she just used to say she was doing, was it like happy cat, sad cat? Or cow or something, I don't know. She was just bending her back at 70 years of age. It was dead cute. She loved it.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Well, people do say one of the kind of the health benefits that people talk about a lot, actually, is the benefits for healthy aging.
It is interesting when you look at those populations that live a long time. A lot of the people who live longest don't do any extreme exercise. I think a big part of that is that they don't get injured. And if you do forms of exercise that have a higher injury risk, you're more apt to end up with a serious injury, which can incapacitate you. And then there's a lot that falls out of that. I'm keen to highlight the fact that people will respond a little bit differently to different forms of yoga. A good example of this is hot yoga. Bikram is the best known form of that. How does adding heat to yoga alter any of the ways that our bodies adapt to it?
I mean, hot yoga is quite distinct. There's less research around that. I mean, generally, it's not used as much as a health intervention. It does really make you, I think it has a real feel-good factor. But I do know a lot of people who then had to give it up because it did have health consequences that were less positive. But there's a whole now movement more towards heated yoga studios, and that's very different. And I think that's where maybe you'd get more balanced benefits.
I do think that there's a lot of potential there, basically because when you add heat, you increase cardiovascular strain. And there's also the fact that at higher core temperatures, muscles are more pliable. So I think there's the potential for hot yoga to have some greater physical adaptations. There's also a really, really interesting body of evidence showing that specifically heating the brain, this is often done through something called whole body hypothermia, can be used to help treat major depression.
Hot brain?
Hot brain summer, yeah.
I think maybe also there's a difference between like heated and hot. Like Bikram is a sort of set system and there's no drinking. And I think there's maybe some issues around it.
I don't think I've done that one.
So maybe it's more about having heat.
Yeah.
I've done it once at a place near me, and genuinely, I don't think I've sweat so much. I nearly broke my nose with my arms slipping on the mat in a down dog. I was like, but I didn't realise the class was like an hour and a half.
Down dog or sad cat?
Not sad cat or happy cat or down dog. But it was an intense experience. Maybe, Greg, our first yoga class together could be a hot one.
Okay, all right.
I'll take you to the one near me.
Yeah. Ideal.
You're not going to do it. I already tell.
Before we get to the day-to-day practice, you've done some research looking at barriers that stop people from trying or maintaining a yoga practice. What have you found?
Yeah, so we've particularly looked at barriers in relation to particular groups like men. So it's quite interesting to hear you haven't really practiced yoga and your kind of perception on it.
I am the stereotype.
Yeah. And I think if we look at who practices yoga, that tells us a lot about potential barriers for a start, that it tends to be in the West, women and more educated and more white. So key barriers are perceptions of yoga in the West. And I think, they're inaccurate perceptions because really yoga is for everybody. And so a really important focus is, well, how can we remove some of those barriers? And really a lot of that is how can we actually change perceptions about yoga? that it's not, that you don't have to be flexible before you start, or that it's mainly for women and is quite feminized. So we need to really create spaces where everyone feels more welcome. And really that is a lot about how yoga is promoted and where it's available as well.
To summarize what we've covered so far in the science section, we spoke about how yoga is a mind-body practice, integrating the two, and that's part of the reason why it can be good for both the brain and the rest of the body. For example, yoga can improve flexibility, ability to keep balance, and also help ease stress and reduce measures of anxiety and depression. And it probably has these benefits in several ways. Regarding stress and mood, yoga influences the function of the central nervous system in ways that help us switch from a stressed fight or flight mode into a more restorative rest and relaxation one. Another is by making people more mindful in general, better at paying attention to things in the present moment. There are other factors at play, like if we start a yoga program, we might meet new people, and some of Tina's work suggests that people who start yoga make other positive changes to health habits. There's more research on some forms of yoga than others. If you add heat to a yoga practice, you're going to increase the strain on your cardiovascular system, which could plausibly lead to bigger improvements in things like the function of your blood vessels than yoga done at normal temperatures, but we need more work on this. And then finally, yoga is very safe. It has low injury rates. To put them into perspective, injury rates are comparable to sports such as cycling and bodybuilding, which means they're much lower than most team sports, including things like football and rugby. But before we get to the practice section, our producer Lise asked Tina to take us through the kind of relaxation promoting breathing exercises she sometimes uses with her students. So if you want to wind down and you're able to stop what you're doing for a minute or two, let's take a moment now to try this activity.
How about we do really simple breathing practice where we inhale for 4 and exhale for 6. This is really good for helping us to feel more relaxed. So shall we do it together?
Yeah. Am I inhaling through my nose and out through my mouth?
I'll talk you through.
Okay.
So just make sure that you've got your feet on the ground. Maybe you have a little roll of your shoulders just to release any tension. And you can close your eyes if that's comfortable, or just gaze downwards. So we're going to breathe in and out through our nose. So let's inhale together. Have a little pause at the top, and then exhale through the nose. So slightly slower. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. A little pause. And then exhaling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do a couple more rounds. So inhaling. Keep nice and relaxed, relaxing through the face. Pause. And then exhaling, nice long, slow breath, relaxing through the shoulders. Really emptying the belly fully of the breath. And one last round, inhaling. And then slowly exhaling. And let's do another little circle of the shoulders, releasing and opening through the eyes. Well done. How was that?
Delightful. I bet we nearly sent Dr. P to bed.
I was going to say, I'm going to fall asleep.
That was lovely. Thanks, Tina. Oh, I feel lovely and relaxed.
Ideally, for a breathing practice, it's great if you can do it for 4 minutes, ideally.
Oh, okay.
And now back to the episode. Let's get into some practical tips for those of you who are thinking about getting into yoga or want to improve your practice.
So, for someone who has never tried yoga, but they're open to it, where would you suggest they start, and how helpful are things like apps or online classes for starting to build a practice?
Yeah, I think apps can be really helpful, but I suppose my broad recommendation, if possible, it's really good to start with a in-person class with a teacher just to really learn the basics, get the foundation, check that you're practicing correctly, learn the kind of core techniques, breathing practices, physical kind of poses, and then you can supplement that with apps or with online provision. So then that's a really good combination. But if possible, it's not possible for everyone, to have that actually be led by a teacher initially.
So if we take the walking cliche like myself, who could be yoga curious if it was sold to them, but who does other types of exercise, let's say resistance training, lifting weights, and they do endurance training too, which is going to be harder on the respiratory and cardiovascular systems, making both of those harder to recover from. But they want to add in some yoga, which is going to be more strenuous than regular static stretching. And so in that way, it occupies a kind of middle ground. What would you say to that person about how to implement yoga alongside the other exercise that they're doing, which is already relatively taxing?
I think that's a really brilliant example, Greg, because actually one of the real barriers men talk about is that they prioritize other activities and value them more. But actually, if it's promoted as a complementary practice and it improves flexibility, so it may actually improve their performance and also their cardiovascular performance as well, recovery and so on. But also, I think a really important piece is most people are stressed. And yoga practice is a really good complement because actually that can help manage stress. For a lot of men, that really appeals to them. So it's just packaging it as, it's not either or, but more complementary.
Actually, on that note, I strongly suspect that a lot of men stand to benefit more from yoga than women do for a few reasons. One is I think women generally are better at speaking about things than men are. And so maybe they need things like yoga more than women do. But another is that there are differences between the sexes in flexibility. So females, for the most part, have greater joint range of motion than males do. We're quite stiff by comparison. If I think about my friends, most of whom are in their mid-30s, then shortly after they leave university, they really start locking up and become quite immobile. And it's amazing how much they can change physically over the space of 10 to 15 years. So actually, a lot of the people who should be doing yoga most are probably not doing it.
Yeah, no, I think that's such an important point. So the work we've done with men to see, right, okay, how can it be more, what are the barriers and how can we overcome that, is this sort of association with yoga sort of being, you know, sometimes they use the term woo-woo or spiritual that really doesn't appeal to men.
Yeah.
So I think a way in for men is more focusing on the functional benefits and outcomes. So it's really about gearing for anyone who practices, you know, applies to any behavior really.
You need to sell it differently.
Yeah, but also that the motivations that you have, you go in and set your own goals, what's important to you. So it might be much more around functional benefits, or it might be more around stress management. And they will change over time as well. That's very much what we find in the research.
I have friends that absolutely love yoga and are fully part of that culture. Actually, I can think about being in Bali a couple of years ago, and a friend of mine, a Belgian woman, she was going to the yoga barn in Ubud on a regular basis. And she's saying, "Oh, it's so great. You should absolutely come at some point." And I said, "Oh, no, it's full of people and they're crystals and they're all hugging trees and stuff." And then one day she convinced me to go. And I got there and I thought, "Oh, man, this is so nice." Just surrounded by these giant plants. Everyone's really friendly.
So funny.
The food is great. Everyone's in a great mood. And I ended up going back there of my own accord just because I like the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Brilliant example.
So when you said you've never really done it, that was a lie.
No, I've never done it. I've just sat there drinking coffee, surrounded by all the yogis who are much more enlightened than myself.
But I think, you know, I think it's a really important point though about like enjoyment.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it requires a lot of effort to do any kind of activity. So you're only going to take up yoga or certainly continue with it if you enjoy it. So there's a whole behavior change angle. I think at the start you were saying about, well, yoga, it's not like cardiovascular kind of activities. but actually it's an easier way in. So if people aren't fit or they're overweight, it's a brilliant way to get more mobile. So a lot of people talk about starting yoga that they then take up other healthier behaviors like walking more or starting going to the gym. So we know how difficult it is to take up healthy behaviors. So I think that's quite an important pathway as well.
And then they end up in yoga retreats in Bali.
Is that where you
With
are?
lots of crystals around themselves. And
Hold on.
right now.
That's where you are, isn't it? You're on a secret yoga retreat in Bali and you just didn't want us to know.
I am. I'm in a class right now. I've just got really good sound cancelling.
Knew it. I know we briefly touched on it in the previous question, just around stress. And if someone was feeling quite overwhelmed and looking to turn to yoga for stress management, what does a realistic starting point look like for them? And are there any certain types of yoga that are better suited for stress management if someone was looking to start researching into one?
In terms of yoga style, hatha yoga is the one that's most commonly used in research, for example. And, if you think of kind of normal standard community classes, that's probably the most common type of yoga offered. So I think that's a really good starting point anyway. It's not too strong like Ashtanga or Vinyasa yoga. You want something where you're going to be a little bit more gentle and a bit more focused on breathing practices. So I think that's really helpful for stress management.
So is that the difference with hatha? It's more about breathing slower, a bit more controlled than the other forms?
Yeah, as it's presented in the West, hatha is generally associated with perhaps a more gentle practice with more focus on breath and relaxation. So it's a good starting point.
We're about to move into the next segment, but just before we do, give us a minute for a quick word about Thriver.
Thriver. You will have heard us say that word.
Maybe you're wondering why.
We're nothing without them.
In all seriousness, as you know, on this show, we love to get stuck into complex health questions. Well, Thriver is a brand that is all about that too. If you're ever looking for more resource on health, their website's got some genuinely useful content that isn't just generic.
They've got great insights into what's actually worth doing when it comes to nutrition, exercise, your mind, long-term health. They cover a lot of stuff and give you some realistic advice you can take on board in the real world. We're now going to move into the experience section, which is where we've collated some questions that some listeners have sent in.
Wonderful.
Get some advice from yourself. So the first question is from Pam in Aberdeen, and they have asked, I started yoga 3 years ago initially on a one-to-one basis to help me recover from a rib injury. I then joined classes and over the last 2 years have been on yoga retreats in Corfu twice and Goa. Very nice. I've become very interested in the philosophy, read lots of books and also started to meditate. All was well until early January of this year and I've lost my yoga mojo. I still attend class, but I cannot seem to get the magic back. I find it difficult to settle into my physical practice and my meditation. Is this normal? What, if anything, can I do to restore my practice? I miss it. My body and mind misses it. I'm 64 years of age, fit, healthy, eat and live well.
Thanks for that. It's completely normal. I think sometimes we just need to refresh our practice. And sometimes we just have a period where it's not quite working for us. So certainly don't worry. But obviously you've got the real motivation to continue because you miss it. So one possibility might be to try a different class and perhaps join a different group, or maybe even have a little pause until you're drawn back to practicing again. But maybe also just shorten the practice. So just do really small practices just to keep your body supple and keep all the benefits of yoga, and a shorter meditation practice. So that might help you re-engage with the practice.
Just building on that, Tina, do you have any thoughts about how yoga compares to something like Tai Chi, another of these mind-body practices? So one of the things that she could explore is temporarily trying an activity like Tai Chi and then returning to yoga, because she's going to get some of the same benefits, and she could maybe continue elements of the things that she's gained through her yoga practice, like mindfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's good to change it up.
Thank you. So the next question is from Mark from the Midlands. He says he's just approaching 60, never done yoga before, but yoga curious.
Oh, wonderful.
Another yoga curious. Turning up to a session where I feel everyone else knows the rules is daunting. What advice can you give to newbies to go to that first session?
That's such a great question and such a common one as well. And I would suggest going to a local community class and maybe having a little chat with the teacher, the yoga teacher at the start, just so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable. And just really remember that yoga is not competitive. And when a new person comes, a beginner to a class, if it's a mixed level class, then the teacher will adjust the class and give extra instructions to guide you in the practice. And I suppose a final thing is just be patient, that it'll take you a few weeks to kind of really get a hang of the practice. So just stick in there and I'm sure you will enjoy it. And actually, I see that a lot, particularly with older men, actually, but they soon pick it up. So I encourage you to be brave and turn up.
I think a lot of studios now as well, they signpost online, I think, or on the poster, don't they, if it's a beginner-friendly class to hopefully try and take some of that anxiety out of it.
Yeah, definitely. But I think often the studio classes, yoga studio, and then there's more community classes like you were talking about at the start, Charlie, with your
my nan.
With your nan. Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes community classes are perhaps a bit more inviting.
Yeah.
And feel a bit more accessible and comfortable. And they're always advertised in the local area and sometimes even through the GP as well. They might be able to signpost you through social prescribing networks. So, that would be my suggestion.
Oh. And then the final question we've got is from Nikki from Hampshire. It's a short but sweet question. Should you do yoga if you're hypermobile?
That's a great question.
I hope you don't say no because I'm hypermobile.
There's nothing to stop you practicing yoga when you're hypermobile. And in fact, lots of people in yoga classes are, I think actually, Greg, as you were kind of alluding to. But what you really need to be really careful of is not overstretching because you're really flexible. Actually, what you really need to focus on is building strength and not maxing out on flexibility. So sometimes it can be really good to combine with more strength-based exercises as well. So nothing to stop you going, but do let the teacher know that you're hypermobile, or they'll see anyway. And then there can be modifications made to stop you overstretching.
Are there any other health conditions that are a bit of a risk to do yoga with? Thinking more around like osteoporosis.
No, it's actually really good for osteoporosis.
Okay.
But again, it's just about adapting the class to any kind of physical issues. So certain kind of back issues, slip discs and so on. So it's really important with any health condition that you always speak to the yoga teacher at the start.
Amazing. That is all from today. So thank you, Tina. We tend to finish our episodes asking our guests if there was one thing that a listener could take away from this conversation. What would you like it to be?
It would definitely be regularity. Much better to have a regular practice, even if it's really bite-sized, than just doing it occasionally. Mm-hmm. So ideally, you might do one class a week because that gives you the full kind of benefit of a full yoga practice, but then supplement that with embedding it into your everyday life. So maybe you have a breathing practice, you could use a video, for example, or one that you've learned in class that you like, and maybe you do that every morning. Maybe you have a short practice that you do maybe before bed, and that's when you'll really notice the difference. So that would be my real recommendation. And really monitor how you feel when you practice. How does it make you feel? How does it feel over time? So that really helps to keep the motivation as well. And you see what works for you. And then over time, you might want to increase the practice a bit more.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tina.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
Charlie Edmondson, what are your takeaways from today?
I was very intrigued at diabetes and yoga. I would never have put those two together, that there's health benefits for diabetes. I was also interested by the hot brain and depression. What are your takeaways?
I love how accessible yoga is. You don't need equipment for it, just your body, and it's a great, safe way to get into exercise. It's also a helpful adjunct to other types of exercise. For instance, it's generally quite easy to recover from, and it's more focused on balance and mobility than most types of exercise, whereas resistance training is better for building muscle, bone and strength, and endurance training is best for stimulating the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. So a combination of them is probably going to serve you best. Like any type of exercise, there are better and worse ways to do yoga, but nowadays there are plenty of good teachers and online resources available. I really appreciate the work that Tina's doing to try and help us better understand yoga, and maybe people like myself who gravitate to other forms of exercise should be a bit more open-minded about it, because there are many benefits that come with yoga.
You've been listening to The Method, Health in the Real World, a podcast brought to you by Thriver.
If you don't know about Thriver, it's a health tracking platform that helps you see where your health is heading and what to work on, as well as how to do it. They use painless at-home blood testing to look inside your body and see what's going on. Your tests are analysed by accredited labs, and based on the results, which are reviewed by doctors, you get personalised guidance from real people. People use Thriver like a compass, testing every few months to help steer their health to where they'd like it to be. It's a great tool to start feeling more empowered about your health and to get information that you need to make progress, even when life is chaotic.
Thriver also has some great content out there that can help you get to grips with complex health questions, exactly like what we're trying to do on this podcast. And all of that is free to access. So if you want to learn more, head over to thriver.co. That's thriver.co.
And if you want to listen to Charlie sing really, really well, subscribe to the show. Come back every week for more tunes. You won't be disappointed.
Well, unless you beg me to stop, but even then, probably not.
You can find us by email at themethod@thriver.co.
Seriously, we'd love to hear all of your questions. And your voice. We love a voice note.
Special thanks to the Thriver team and to Lower Street for helping us bring the show to life. Content direction by Rich Cousins, Hamish Grierson, Tamar Loach, Vishal Shah and Katie Yockey. Production by our resident yogi, Lee Zavati, as well as Ryan Sutton and Sam Dattapoulin. Sound design by Alex Rose.
We're your hosts, Charlie Edmondson and Greg Potter, and we will see you next time.
Thanks and bye. Ready, steady, Tina!
Yay, dinner!
We again didn't get a song of the week.
Oh, blooper, sorry. Beep.
Full of bloopers today.
Oh, beep, yeah. Sorry, Lise. I'll think of one for next week.